What is up, ladies and gentlemen, it's Scott here, and I'm pumped to bring you yet another Fallout 4 build. This is the Radman. The Radman is an academic genius, and his intelligence is rivaled only by his passionate craving for achievement. This man will go to any lengths for understanding, putting his own life and the lives of those around him on the line in the name of science. He uses his mental acuity and physical prowess to outsmart and withstand the threats of the post-apocalyptic wasteland, turning what seem like hazards into weapons he can use on his foes. He exploits everything from chems to the decapitated head of a fallen assaultron to carry out his will. He tolerates deadly doses of radiation in order to take down his enemies in a devastating fashion. This build is unique in that it rewards patience and careful play, and revolves around radiation-based perks and weapons. The Radman's playstyle takes time to master, but when his potential is realized, he can become an unstoppable force. More fool any opposition who previously dismissed the Radman as feeble. He'll personally scorch the skin from any doubters with his lethal gamma gun. A quick reminder, the timestamps to each section of the video can be found just below in the description, so be sure to have a gander if you need to navigate any specific details. Without any further ado, let's jump into the Radman's backstory. The Radman was the only child of a pair of academics in Boston. From a very young age, the Radman had a yearning for learning. He had a very close relationship with his mother, who worked as a chemistry professor at the Commonwealth Institute of Technology. She would often bring home children's chemistry sets for him to play with, and would let him wear her lab coat despite how comically oversized it looked on him. The white hem would trail behind as he scampered around the garden, tainting the immaculate white cloth with grass stains. When he had time to play outside, he was less interested in associating with the neighboring children and more concerned with studying the local flora and fauna. He would take the magnifying glass from one of his many science kits, and he'd study the physiology of the insects he could collect. Unsurprisingly, his passions in school were the sciences. As he matured and became increasingly intelligent, he developed the belief that with modern scientific developments, the human race was on the verge of evolving beyond mortality. He was convinced that the cures to all of humanity's weaknesses were out there, waiting to be discovered, and the Radman fully intended to be the one who found them. As a young man with a fascination for the human condition, the Radman kept himself in prime physical condition, exercising frequently and spending the rest of his time in the school laboratories. He knew that for humans to prosper, they had to nurture and care for their biological vessels. He was also open to experimenting with illicit drugs and chems for the sake of analysis and documentation, though he'd never let their addictive effects take hold thanks to staunch mental discipline. As the age of adulthood came around, the Radman's studies were interrupted by a heart-wrenching family emergency. His mother had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and was admitted to Milton General Hospital. The Radman stood by her throughout the battle, providing moral support during endless sessions of radiation and chemotherapy, all while trying to stay on top of the overwhelming pressure of his academic curriculum. After a 2-year battle, the Radman's mother had decided that the pain, fatigue, and mental impairment caused by the therapy wasn't worth prolonging the inevitable. She opted out of the medical treatment, wishing to live out the rest of her life free from suffering with her mind intact. She soon passed away naturally, but despite her wishes, the Radman was distraught. He truly believed the radiation therapy would have saved her, and since that day, the Radman decided to focus on radiobiology when enrolling into C.I.T. He saw firsthand the preserving effects the radiation could have, and hypothesized that the key to transcending mortality lied in the study of radiation. When he graduated, he had learned so much of radiation and had completely exhausted the resources available to him. However, he wanted to continue with ongoing research immediately, and the most effective way that he could see to do that was in the military, for they had access to all of the resources he could ever need. He joined the robotics division of the United States Armed Forces and focused heavily on the handling and deployment of RobCo units, most notably the Assaultron. He went to the efforts to analyze how the nuclear material was used by RobCo engineers to create the Assaultron's unique laser beam, noting the correlation between the power of the technology and the radioactive material used to create said power. After serving a full term, he returned home to his father. His father had lived alone since his deployment and his mother's passing, and the involuntary solitude was taking its toll on him. Despite being in his early 50s, years of grief had aged his father significantly. Laughter lines on his cheeks and brow had gradually been obscured by deep wrinkles. His father strongly encouraged the Radman to defer his research in order to focus on what really mattered, raising a family and settling down. The Radman obliged, and shortly after beginning his sabbatical, he met a beautiful young academic named Nora. She had studied law, and her intellectual nature had reminded the Radman of his mother. They soon settled down in the tranquil suburb of Sanctuary Hills. The Radman had planned to return to CIT as a professor, partially to fulfill a lifelong dream, but also due to the access it would grant him to their labs and equipment. But before he would ever get the chance, military tensions reached breaking point, and nuclear fallout descended on Boston. As a man of science, the Radman will be enthralled by the changed state of the Commonwealth, his thirst for knowledge becoming insatiable. At first, he will be hesitant and prudent, observing the impacts of the excessive radiation from the safe confines of a hazmat suit, but as he grows accustomed to his surrounding and learns of the immortalizing effects of radiation on ghouls and mutated creatures, he'll put his fitness to the test, hoping to utilize his environment to become the ultimate being. He will be captivated by the fact that the deformed creatures inhabiting the land seem to benefit from the hazards of nuclear fallout, supporting his centuries-old theory that radiobiology was the key to human greatness and prosperity. Even though he will be expending most of his efforts towards personal research, he will follow Sean's trail in the hope of acquiring more information about the world around him. He won't try too hard to abide by any moral compass, and upon learning about the synth situation, he'll care more about the mechanics of the advanced technology itself rather than the societal impact. But despite this, he will assist the railroad in their endeavors, if only to get his hands on the impressive creations of Tinker Tom, most notably the ballistic weave. There will be no question of who to side with once he meets the Institute. Their ambition and practicality speaks volumes to the Radman, and he feels that there is no space for railroad social justice in an age of redevelopments such as this. Once the main faction conflicts conclude, the Radman will be able to utilize the Institute's resources for his own work, much like he had hoped to do before the fallout began. Soon later, the Radman hears of an ominous island on which levels of radiation are much higher than Boston. While this would deter most travelers, the feral irradiated island of Far Harbor will become a tantalizing treat for him and his experiments. The Radman had always been dedicated to science, sparing little thought for religious beliefs, but as his exposure to the new world sets in and his obsession with radiation reaches paramount, the Radman's curiosity will begin to transform into fanaticism. When he discovers the children of Atom, he will become a zealot for the cause. The preachings of the children of Atom will hit close to home for the Radman, and he begins to believe that the glow had touched his mother in his past life, and therefore he would be a prophet of Atom. His research would lead to the next phase of human evolution and ascendancy. Now let's have a gander at the Radman's start game stats. You'll want to leave the vault with 3 strength, 1 perception, 10 endurance, 1 charisma, 10 intelligence, 2 agility, and 1 luck. The special book's bonus point will go into luck, and as you can see, the Radman will concentrate his skills into a couple of areas. The first of these is endurance. We know the Radman is devoted to realizing the potential of humanity. He wants to be the pioneer of the new post-nuclear age, and to do this, he is a prime physical specimen. He is familiar with all the dangers of the Commonwealth, most specifically radiation, and he is well prepared to tackle any obstacles head-on for what he believes in. For this reason, he is durable, he's robust enough to slog through the ionized horrors of the wasteland and come out clean on the other side. 10 points of endurance before gear and bobblehead speaks for itself, and is undoubtedly justified. His second major stat is intelligence. None of these efforts and accomplishments would be possible without a mind as sharp as the Radman's. The pursuit of information has defined him since he was old enough to read, and there are very few citizens in Boston capable of outwitting this boffin. Since his mother's passing, the Radman has been holistically invested in his research, and his intellect is unwavering, regardless of the ramifications. He will have a base intelligence of 10 and will be the master of applying his scholarly know-how in the field. Now that we've spec'd the Radman, let's get into his essential perks. First up from the strength stat line, we have the armor perk. The Radman doesn't amount to being very strong. He is vigorous, yes, but in terms of raw power, that isn't his specialty. However, as an educated man and former member of the US Army Robotics Division, he does have an understanding of armor. There's a reason Assaultrons are such a pain to take down. Dropping 4 points in this perk will give the Radman access to the strongest ballistic weave. Next comes endurance, and we'll be taking a number of perks from this stat line. We know the Radman studies take him into precarious situations, often testing his legality and resolve, but he is more than prepared. You'll want to invest in the Chem Resistant perk. At level 2, this perk will offer complete immunity to chem addiction, and we know from his past that the Radman had always kept his head in check check when dealing with drugs. The next perk from Endurance will come as no surprise. This is one of the staples of the build. This is rad resistant, and with all 4 levels, the Radman will receive plus 40 radiation resistance. The advantages of the Radman's affinity for radiation take shape in the form of the Ghoulish perk. With his high endurance, complementary gear, and perk choices, this niche pick becomes a defining factor of the Radman's playstyle. Fully optimized, this means radiation will regenerate lost health, and rad damage will also slowly heal over time. Another little bonus is that some feral ghouls will randomly become friendly, evidently mistaking you for one of their own. We'll get more into it in the gear section, but in tandem with one of his main weapon choices, the Salvaged Assaultron head, this perk will cause every shot fired to restore a significant amount of health. For a more detailed insight into this mechanic, check out our best ghoulish setup video. The link will be posted in the description. From the intelligence stat line, we suggest dropping 3 points into medic. This build can be very effective, but it is with no doubt a difficult build to master, so having more potent stimpaks is a must. Also, as the son of a chemistry expert and a lifelong scientist, investing in this perk is a given for the Radman. Also from intelligence, we have gun nut and science. Similar to Armorer mentioned earlier, the Radman's stint in the military taught him some valuable hands-on lessons about the application of modifications to guns and energy weapons. With 4 points in each, you'll have access to all available upgrades. The Impervious Radman has a knack for getting the best results out of chems, and by maxing out the Chemist perk, any chems he consumes will last an additional 200% longer, wiping out enemies one by one, while under the wonderful effects of Jet will be infinitely more fruitful with this perk. The self-proclaimed child of Atom certainly doesn't assume that title without the right qualifications, and the Radman will take all ranks of the Nuclear Physicist perk to drive that notion home. We don't get this for power armor though, we get it because it makes all radiation weapons deal double damage. This perk will scale well with 2 of his main weapons, the Gamma Gun and the Radium Rifle. As for the agility stat line, we recommend spending 5 points on the Gunslinger perk. With this maxed, non-automatic pistols will dish out double damage, and each attack will have an 8% chance to disarm or cripple an opponent. These effects will work well with the Salvaged Assaultron head. Similarly, the Commando perk is worth undertaking, as this will improve the punch of the Radium Rifle. It's important to note that despite using an automatic option after modding, Commando won't really enhance the Gamma Gun. Finally, we have luck. From this stat, you'll want to invest in Fortune Finder and Scrounger. These will increase the chances of finding bottle caps and ammo in containers. You'll want to use both of these perks to actually get money for buying gamma rounds. We suggest you slap 3 points into Fortune Finder and 4 into Scrounger. The 4th rank will grant the opportunity to gain ammo back when firing the last round of a clip. Very useful for the Gamma Gun. Not including gear, but including all bobbleheads, the Radman's special stats will be 4 strength, 2 perception, 11 endurance, 2 charisma, 11 intelligence, 3 agility, and 3 luck. While it could be argued that the name Radman refers to his unyielding attraction to radioactive materials, it also nicely describes his rad style and aesthetic. His time in the wasteland is humbling, and he sticks to practical attire in the field. At the very early stages of the game, you can wear a hazmat suit for role-playing, but shortly as the Radman becomes more curious about radiation, you'll want to step out into the wasteland and find an assortment of armor pieces and place them over Raider leathers. If you really want to, you could even wear some sort of lab suit outfit early on, as it could remind the Radman of his mother. Eventually, however, as you get into the higher levels and start becoming even more curious about radiation and even the elusive Children of Atom, you'll want to get some Child of Atom long rags. Especially once the Radman has embraced the Children of Atom's ideologies in Far Harbor. This will be ballistic weaved, and it boasts plus 25 radiation resistance and plus 2 endurance. For headwear, the assault gas mask looks badass. This can be obtained early on and bolsters your radiation resistance by 15. Weapons are a little trickier for this build. The Radman's 3 primary weapons are all a little more difficult to come by, but during the early game, whatever pistols and automatic rifles that will keep him breathing will suffice. As for the endgame, the Radman will carry a fully upgraded Gamma Gun, the Salvaged Assaultron head, and a fully upgraded automatic Radium Rifle. The Salvaged Assaultron head is a weapon with some unique effects, and once again, for more information on how the weapon works with this build, check out the best ghoulish setup vid in the description. The Gamma Gun can be found in the Commonwealth, but in order to get your hands on the Radium Rifle, or potentially the Kiloton Radium Rifle, you'll need to head through Far Harbor as soon as possible. Hancock is the ideal companion for the Radman. Not only is he entertaining company, he's a ghoul who likes chems. The Radman will strive to learn as much as possible about Hancock and the effect radiation had on him. The Radman will have access to 2 suitable bases of operation Federation, one being the Institute HQ and one being the Children of Atom HQ. Therefore, he won't devote much time to building settlements. However, if establishing small-scale bases close to areas of interest seems beneficial, you can utilize the Children of Atom customization options. And that concludes this week's Fudge Muppet Fallout 4 build, the Radman. Thanks so much for watching, and if you liked the build, drop a like and share the video with your friends. Also, if you're new to the channel, subscribe for more content just like this. All of your support means the world to us, and don't forget to head on down to the description for the timestamps to each section of the video and links to our social media. Once again, thanks for watching, I'm Scott, and I'll see you in the next one.